Darren Nolan had exactly $4 left in his bank account and a soggy granola bar in his glove box when his 7-year-old daughter, Harper, asked if they could stop for ice cream after swim class. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror, her cheeks still pink from the pool, towel wrapped around her like a cape. She looked so hopeful, so unaware of the bills piling up back home. "We'll see, Bug," he said with a tight smile, his knuckles tightening around the steering wheel. "Let's get you dried off first." Every Tuesday and Thursday, Darren brought Harper to the community center's free swim class. She loved it. He loved seeing her happy. But lately, it was a struggle just to keep gas in the car. After losing his job at the mechanic shop 3 months ago, he'd been scraping by with odd jobs mowing lawns, assembling furniture, anything he could find. He walked into the steamy pool area, holding Harper's duffel bag and trying not to look entirely like a man drowning in life. That's when he saw her. The woman standing by the bleachers wasn't like the other parents. She wasn't scrolling through her phone or yelling at a toddler. She stood straight, elegant, watching the kids with a focused calm. Her long dark hair was swept into a low ponytail, and even in jeans and a simple blouse, she looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine. Harper ran toward the pool deck, waving at her instructor. Darren sat on the far bench, trying not to stare, but he failed miserably when the woman turned and caught his eye. She gave a small nod. Polite. Reserved. He quickly looked away, pretending to dig through Harper's bag. "But then, you always come to both days?" Her voice was smooth, low, with a hint of something he couldn't place East Coast, maybe? He looked up. She had moved closer, arms crossed casually. Her eyes were a soft hazel, curious but guarded. "Yeah," he said, clearing his throat. "Harper loves it. Can't get her out of the water." "Which one's yours?" He pointed. "The one doing cannonballs when she's supposed to be learning backstroke." The woman laughed. It was real, not forced. "That's mine," she said, nodding at a small boy with perfect form gliding across the lane. "Liam." Very serious about technique. Probably gets it from his grandfather. He was Navy. "I didn't know they taught Olympic-level swimming at a community pool," Darren said, and she smiled again. "I'm Lila Prescott. Darren Nolan." They shook hands. Hers was warm, with a firm grip. He noticed her watch, silver, sleek, probably cost more than his rent. "What do you do, Darren?" she asked, not in a nosy way. More like she actually wanted to know. He hesitated. "I used to be a mechanic. Right now, kind of a handyman / whatever pays the bills." She tilted her head. No pity in her expression, just curiosity. That's honest. Most people would have said consultant or something vague. He chuckled. "Guess I'm not good at lying." There was a pause, but it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. The whistle blew. Swim class ended. Kids scrambled out of the pool, laughing and dripping water everywhere. Harper ran straight to him, shivering. "Daddy, I did a dive. Like a real one. I saw a bug. Nailed it." Lila handed Liam a towel. He walked over to Harper and gave her a shy wave. She grinned back. "We're grabbing smoothies," Lila said. "There's a place a few blocks over. Want to join?" Darren's stomach clenched. He looked at Harper, who was already bouncing at the idea. But he couldn't pretend he could afford a smoothie he'd have to put on a credit card. "Maybe next time," he said quickly. "We've got stuff." Lila didn't push, just smiled and nodded. But as they walked away, Darren noticed her glance back once. The next week, she was there again. And the next. They started talking more about their kids, the swim coach, the weather. Then about real things. Darren found himself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays more than he'd admit. "I'm guessing Liam's dad isn't in the picture?" he asked one afternoon as the kids swam. "Nope," Lila said without hesitation. "Just me and him. His father's elsewhere. In every sense." Darren nodded. "I get that." She looked at him. "What about Harper's mom?" "She left when Harper was 2. Said she wasn't cut out for motherhood." Lila blinked. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. "It's fine. Harper's my world." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. That night, Darren lay in bed thinking about her. About the way she listened, the way she laughed, the way she never made him feel lesser even though he knew deep down she wasn't just doing okay. She was wealthy. He didn't know how wealthy yet, but it was clear in the details. The car with no logo, the designer bag, the way she mentioned flying to New York for a quick meeting, like it was a trip to the grocery store. He should have felt intimidated. But instead, he felt drawn in. 2 weeks later, it happened. He was under the hood of a rusted-out truck, sweat dripping into his eyes, when a sleek black SUV pulled up beside him in the driveway. He wiped his hands on a rag and squinted. Lila stepped out. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, looking around at the tools scattered on the lawn. "No, I just wasn't expecting, you." She smiled. "Liam wanted to see if Harper could come over for a movie. I figured I'd ask in person." Harper, hearing her name, came running out of the house. "Can I, Daddy? Please." Darren looked at Lila. "You sure?" "You don't have to, I want to." "All right," he said. Before Harper could leave, Lila turned back to Darren. "You too." "What?" "Come with us. I've got a projector in the backyard. Popcorn machine. Real butter." He hesitated. She stepped closer. "You're allowed to say yes." So he did. That night, Darren sat in Lila's backyard, watching a movie beneath the stars while their kids giggled on beanbags. The pool was lit up like a resort, the air filled with the scent of jasmine and caramel corn. It felt unreal. "You live in a different world," he said quietly. "I live in this one," she said. "And right now, you're in it too." He turned to her. "Why me?" She looked surprised. "What do you mean? You could be with anyone. Some guy in a suit. Someone who doesn't check his bank balance before buying milk." "I don't care about any of that," she said softly. "I care that you show up. That you look your daughter in the eye when she talks. That you listen. That you're real." He stared at her, heart pounding. "I think I'm falling for you, Darren," she said. He blinked. "You barely know me." "I know enough." He didn't say anything, just leaned in and kissed her. It was slow, honest, a kiss that made everything else fade away. "I'm falling too," he whispered when they broke apart. She smiled, her fingers brushing his jaw. "Good." The next morning, Darren woke up still tasting her. His lips tingled from the memory of the night before, of that kiss beneath the stars that had felt more real than anything in years. He turned his head and saw Harper curled up beside him, her hair tangled, one arm flung across the pillow. It grounded him. Reminded him that despite everything he was feeling, he still had to make her breakfast with whatever was left in the pantry. He padded into the kitchen and took stock. A bag of rice, half a loaf of bread, and a single egg. He fried the egg, split it between 2 pieces of toast, and told Harper it was a breakfast sandwich surprise. She beamed like he'd served her pancakes and whipped cream. He felt a pang of guilt, then shook it off. He'd figure something out. He always did. By the time Harper was off to school walking distance, thankfully he had a plan. A guy he'd done landscaping with last month had mentioned a short-term gig hauling equipment for a film crew downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid in cash, and that was enough. He called the number, got a spot, and was told to be at a warehouse parking lot in an hour. He threw on his cleanest shirt, grabbed the toolbox he never left home without, and headed out. The job was brutal. Unloading lighting rigs, moving sandbags, setting up platforms, all beneath a punishing sun. By lunch, his hands were blistered, and his back throbbed. But when he checked his phone and saw a new contact saved as Lila Prescott, his pulse did something strange. There was no message. Just the number. He stared at it, thumb hovering. Then he pocketed the phone. When Harper got home that afternoon, she had a rolled-up drawing clutched in her hand. "It's for Lila," she said, holding it out proudly. "It's her house with the pool and the movie screen and the popcorn machine. And me and Liam and you. And her." Darren crouched to her level. "You want me to give it to her?" "No," she said, eyes wide. "We can go together." He hesitated, but she was already running to her room to get her shoes. They walked the few blocks to the Prescott house, the drawing carefully rolled in Harper's tiny fist. Darren had never been inside during the day. The house looked even more impressive in sunlight. White stone with tall windows and a sprawling front garden that looked professionally maintained. Before they reached the door, it swung open. Lila stood there, barefoot, in a button-down shirt and linen shorts, a phone tucked between her shoulder and ear. She looked surprised, then pleased. "Hang on," she said into the phone. "I'll call you back." She ended the call and stepped aside. "Come in." Harper held up the drawing like an offering. "I made this for you." Lila took it, unrolled it, and smiled. "This is beautiful. You even got the little string lights." Harper beamed. "I can draw you one with your office, too." Lila glanced at Darren. "You've been talking about me, huh?" "Only the good parts," he said, stepping inside. The house was cool and smelled faintly of eucalyptus. A tall vase of white orchids sat on a glass table in the foyer. Darren tried not to stare at the massive staircase or the art on the walls. "Want a drink?" Lila asked. Lemonade? Water? I'm good. She turned to Harper. Liam's in the den. Go surprise him. Harper took off, leaving the door half open behind her. Lila closed it, then looked at Darren. Rough day. He glanced down at his shirt, now stained with sweat and smudges. I probably shouldn't have come straight from work. You look fine, she said. Tired, but fine. He leaned against the wall, arms folded. So, what are we doing here? She raised a brow. You tell me. You kissed me. You said you were falling for me. I meant it. Darren stepped closer. I don't know what this is, or what it's supposed to be. Maybe it doesn't have to be anything yet, she said. Maybe it's just two people trying to figure it out. He looked around. I'm not exactly used to figuring things out in mansions. I'm not used to bringing anyone into mine, she said. So we're both out of our depth. He smiled at that, then nodded toward the kitchen. You have anything to eat? I skipped lunch. She led him to an airy kitchen with marble counters and a fridge large enough to sleep in. She pulled out a platter of grilled chicken, a bowl of couscous, and a dish of roasted vegetables. He blinked. You made all that. I own a catering company, she said. Technically 3. He sat down at the island. You're serious. She passed him a plate. I don't cook for everyone, you know. He took a bite. This is better than anything I've eaten in months. She leaned on the counter. So tell me something. Something real. He chewed, then set his fork down. Okay. I used to race dirt bikes. Before Harper. Before responsibility. She tilted her head. Did you win? Once. Broke my collarbone doing it. Still have the scar. She walked around the counter and touched his shoulder. Show me. He pulled back his shirt collar, revealing a thin white line. She traced it gently. You really did live a whole other life. He met her eyes. What about you? Before Liam. Before all of this. She hesitated. I was married. Young. To someone who thought I'd make a good accessory. Darren frowned. Did he hurt you? Not physically, she said. But he knew how to cut. I left with Liam and nothing else. Built the business from scratch. I don't like being kept. Neither do I. They stood there, the silence thick with shared understanding. Then Liam and Harper burst into the kitchen, dragging a board game between them. Can we play in here? Liam asked. Lila smiled. Only if you let me win. Harper giggled. You're gonna lose, Lila. They all piled onto the floor, the game spread out between them. Darren couldn't remember the last time he laughed this much. When Harper leaned against him, head on his shoulder, he felt that the fragile thing blooming between them had roots now. After the game, Lila walked him and Harper to the door. Thanks for dinner, he said. Thanks for showing up. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her cheek. As they walked home, Harper swung his hand. Do you like her? He smiled at the sky. Yeah, bug. I think I really do. The next day, he got a call from a contractor he'd worked with once before, an emergency plumbing job in a high-rise off the harbor. It paid double his usual rate. He took it, worked until his knuckles bled, and came home with enough cash to fill the pantry. When he opened the fridge to put things away, he found a note taped to a container of leftover pasta. For emergency dinners. He stared at it, heart thudding. He didn't know what this thing growing between them, but for the first time in a long time, it didn't scare him. It made him hope. Darren stood on the Prescott estate's front porch, his hands still slightly damp from washing dishes at the new cafe job he'd picked up. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and steady was a luxury he hadn't had in a long time. In his other hand, he held a folded slip of paper, Harper's drawing of a dream garden, something she'd made for Lila after their last visit. The door opened before he could knock. You're early, Lila said, surprised, her hair swept up this time in a messy knot. She wore a navy blouse tucked into tailored pants, barefoot again, but somehow it made her seem even more put together. Better than late, he said, holding up the drawing. Harper made you another masterpiece. She took it carefully, her fingertips brushing his. She's got a thing for landscaping lately. She told me if I ever make enough, I should buy a tree house with a spiral slide and a koi pond. Lila laughed, then stepped aside. Come in. Liam's in the greenhouse with my assistant, and Harper's supervising. I didn't know you had a greenhouse. There's a lot you don't know. She led him through the hall and out the back, where the sun had just started to dip behind the trees. The greenhouse sat at the edge of the property, all glass and steel, its windows aglow with golden light. Harper sat on a stool with a clipboard while Liam pointed at something leafy in a pot. A young woman in a green apron stood beside them, jotting notes. "I think you've got a future executive on your hands," Lila said. "She's been bossing me around since she was 3, Darren replied. "Come on," she said, tugging his sleeve. "I want to show you something." She led him to a narrow path he hadn't noticed before. It wound between hedges and opened into a small courtyard with a stone bench and a low fountain. It was quiet here, secluded. "This is my favorite spot," Lila said. "No one comes here, not even the staff." He sat beside her. The air smelled faintly of rosemary. "It's beautiful. I used to come here when everything felt too loud," she said. "Board meetings, deadlines, lawyers." He turned to her. "You don't talk about that part much." She shrugged. "There's not much to say. I spent years trying to prove I could build something, that I wasn't just someone's ex-wife or someone's daughter, that I could do it on my own terms." He studied her face. "And did you?" "I did. But then I realized success isn't the same as peace." She looked at him. "You bring peace." The words hit him deeper than he expected. "You bring something I thought I couldn't have anymore." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then sighed. "I have to step away for a call. Just a few minutes." He nodded. "I'll be here." She walked off, and Darren leaned back against the stone. The fountain trickled steadily beside him, the air thick with the scent of herbs and sun-warmed stone. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself just exist. No bills, no shifts, no scrambling. Just here. When Lila returned, her expression had shifted. "That was my attorney," she said, sitting back down. "My ex is contesting the custody agreement again. He wants visitation. He hasn't called Liam in 2 years, and now he wants weekends." Darren's jaw tightened. "He doesn't deserve that." "He doesn't," she agreed. "But the court doesn't always care about deserve." "What are you going to do?" She looked up at him. "Fight." Again, he reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. Their fingers laced together with a quiet certainty. "I know what it's like to have someone try and walk back into a kid's life like they didn't leave it in pieces," he said. She nodded slowly. "How did you deal with it?" "I didn't let her," he said. "Harper's better off not wondering when her mom's going to disappear again." Lila turned toward him. "You don't think it's better for her to have a chance to know her?" "Only if it's a good one," he said. "A real one. Not a ghost who shows up when it's convenient." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't want Liam to ever feel like he wasn't enough, that his father didn't stay because of him." "Then you make sure he knows every single day that he is." She looked at him like she was seeing something she hadn't let herself believe in before. "You're good at this." "I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday." That night, Lila invited them both to stay for dinner again. She didn't cook this time. Instead, she brought in a chef, someone named Mateo, who apparently worked full-time for her catering company, and the 4 of them ate on the patio beneath soft string lights while the kids debated what kind of dog they would get if they could have any. After dessert, Harper fell asleep on a chaise lounge, her head on Darren's lap. Liam was curled up in a chair, a book open across his chest. Lila walked over with a blanket and gently draped it over Liam. "You ever think," she said quietly, "that maybe the life you end up with wasn't the one you planned, but it's the one you needed?" He looked down at Harper. "All the time." "You could stay," she said. He looked up at her. "Just tonight," she added quickly. "There's a guest room. You wouldn't have to carry her back." He hesitated. "You sure?" "I wouldn't offer if I wasn't." He nodded. "All right." She handed him a folded t-shirt and a pair of drawstring pants. "They'll fit," she said. "I bought them when I thought you might say yes." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm an optimist," she said. The guest room was at the end of a quiet hallway. Darren laid Harper down gently on the bed, pulling the blanket over her. She didn't even stir. Back in the hallway, Lila was waiting. "I don't want to rush you," she said. "I know this is a lot." He stepped closer. "It is, but it feels right." She nodded, then leaned forward, brushing her lips against his. This kiss wasn't cautious like the first. It was full of questions and the start of answers. Her hand slid to his chest, resting over his heartbeat. "I don't know where this is going," she whispered. "Me neither," he murmured. "But I want to find out." That night, they didn't sleep together, not in the way that might have been expected. Instead, they sat in the kitchen long after midnight, talking over mugs of tea while the rest of the house slept. They talked about music, about the cities they'd never seen, about the things they would do if time and money weren't in the way. He told her about the old house his grandfather used to own, the one with the wraparound porch and the swing where he learned to read. She told him about a trip she took to Morocco before Liam was born and how she still dreamed of going back. When they finally parted, it was with a kiss and a promise unspoken but understood that this wasn't a moment. It was the beginning of something they both needed more than they'd realized. The next morning, Darren woke up to the sound of laughter. He padded into the kitchen to find Lila making pancakes while Harper and Liam argued over which shape was better, hearts or dinosaurs. He leaned against the doorframe, watching. Lila turned, catching his eye. "Good morning," she said. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "It really is." The next few weeks were a quiet transformation. Not a whirlwind, not a fairy tale, but something more solid, more real. Darren found a rhythm between the cafe job in the mornings and freelance repair gigs in the afternoons. Harper thrived, her drawings evolving from crayon scribbles to full-blown blueprints of magical backyards and homes with secret bookcase passages. And Darren, he started to breathe easier. Lila didn't sweep in to fix his life. She never offered a check or a solution. What she offered was presence. Steady, consistent, and fierce in the way she believed in him even when he didn't. And Darren, in turn, gave her something money never could, a place where she didn't have to be impressive, where she could be messy, tired, scared, and still adored. It was a Thursday, the kind of bright spring afternoon that made everything feel possible when Lila asked him to meet her at her office. Not one of the catering kitchens or the greenhouse project she'd recently started with the kids, but the sleek glass and concrete building downtown. The one with her name etched in silver letters above the entrance. Darren hesitated before walking in. His boots were dusty from a morning spent replacing a fence post. His shirt had a faint tear on the hem. He hadn't been inside a building this pristine since Harper was born. The receptionist greeted him without blinking. "She's expecting you. Top floor." The elevator was silent, its walls mirrored. Darren caught his reflection rough around the edges, but standing tall. When the doors opened, he stepped into a space that looked like a magazine spread. Floor-to-ceiling windows, black marble floors, and a skyline view that made the city look like a toy model. Lila stood at the far end, finishing a conversation with a man in a tailored suit. The man left with a nod, and she turned, her expression softening the moment she saw Darren. "I'm glad you came," she said, walking toward him. "I wanted to show you something." He followed her through a glass door into a conference room. On the table were several large printouts, architectural drawings, renderings, and a thick folder labeled Prescott Community Initiative. She gestured to the plans. "I've been working on this for over a year. A nonprofit wing of the company. Community hubs in underfunded neighborhoods. Free childcare, skill training, meal programs. I didn't want to launch until I found someone who understood what it was like to live it, not just fund it." He looked at her, brow furrowing. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to run one. The first location. I already bought the lot. You'd be the operations manager. You'd hire the staff. Build it from the ground up." He stared at her. "I'm not qualified for that." "You are exactly qualified," she said, voice firm. "You've worked every kind of job. You know how to lead. You know how to fix things, people, places, problems. And you care. That's the part one can't teach." He looked down at the plans. A rec room. A learning center. A small garden out back. "You don't have to do this because of me. I'm doing it because of us," she said. "Because I believe in what we're building together." He exhaled slowly. "This is a lot." "It's not a gift," she said. "It's a partnership." He met her gaze. "Then I want it." That night, he told Harper over a simple dinner of pasta and garlic bread. She blinked at him, then grinned so wide it made his chest ache. "Does this mean we can get a dog?" "Not yet." "How about a fish?" He laughed. "We'll talk." The following weeks moved fast. Darren met with architects, city officials, and community leaders. He took notes, asked questions, stayed up late reading documents he barely understood at first. But he learned. And every time he started to doubt himself, Lila was there not to rescue, but to remind him he belonged in the room. One morning, he stood in the middle of the empty lot, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, and felt something he hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Purpose. One evening, after a long planning session, he arrived at Lila's house to find Liam and Harper building a fort in the living room. Pillows were stacked in chaotic towers, blankets draped across chairs. "We're not done," Liam said solemnly. "We need more lights," Harper added, pulling a string of battery-powered stars from a bag. Lila looked over from the couch, a mug of tea in her hands. They've been at it for hours. I think they're trying to build a castle. Darren crouched to help string the lights. Well, every castle needs a drawbridge. After the kids declared the fort complete and crawled inside with flashlights and books, Darren and Lila stood in the kitchen. Do you realize what we're doing? He asked, pouring 2 glasses of water. Building a pillow empire? No, he turned to face her. A life. Together. She reached for his hand. You're not scared? I'm terrified, he admitted. But not of you. I'm scared of messing this up. Of not being enough. Then we're even, she said softly. Because I'm scared of losing what we found. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep showing up. The next week, they hosted a community dinner in the park beside the lot. Folding tables, string lights, donated food. Darren grilled burgers while Lila handed out lemonade. Neighbors stopped by curious, then grateful, then excited. As the sun dipped low, Harper climbed onto a folding chair and clapped her hands. My dad's gonna build a place for everyone. Lila stepped beside her and raised her glass. And we're going to make sure no one gets left behind. The applause was real. The emotion behind it even more so. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the kids had fallen asleep in the backseat of Darren's car, he and Lila stood by the lot under the stars. This started with swim class, he said, looking out at the space that would soon become something more. It started with you showing up, she said. He turned to her. I want this. All of it. Not just the job. Not just the project. I want you. Us. Forever. She inhaled, eyes shining. Then ask me. He reached into his pocket and held out a small, unpolished silver ring. I don't have a yacht or a vacation home, but I have this, and I have everything I am. Will you marry me? She took the ring, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes. 100 times yes. They kissed beneath the street lamp, quiet and sure. By the end of summer, the center broke ground. The kids started 3rd grade. Darren moved into the guest house on Lila's property, not out of charity, but because it became his home too. They planned a small wedding for the fall. Just family. Just right. And on a chilly October morning, Darren stood at the altar in a suit borrowed from a friend, watching Lila walk toward him in a simple ivory dress, Harper tossing petals ahead of her like she was leading the world's most important parade. They said vows with tears in their eyes and laughter in their hearts. And when they kissed, it wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a life neither of them had dared to dream, built not on wealth or rescue, but on quiet moments, hard-earned trust, and the kind of love that changes everything. Darren adjusted the cuff of his shirt as he stood outside the nearly finished Prescott Community Center, the early autumn wind brushing past his face. The building had gone through a transformation over the past few months, so had he. What once was an overgrown lot now stood proud with clean lines, glass walls, and a wide courtyard shaded by young magnolias. His name wasn't on the sign outside, but he didn't need it to be. Inside, volunteers were setting up for the center's opening gala, a formal event Lila insisted be open to the public, with no ticket price, no exclusivity. Just a celebration of what they'd built together. Darren had fought her on the idea at first. He hated black tie events, and tuxedos made him feel like an imposter. But she'd only raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you really going to argue with me about a party for something you made happen?" He hadn't, because deep down he knew this wasn't about the tux. It was about letting himself believe he belonged in this life. He spotted Liam and Harper through the glass, hanging decorations with a few other kids. Someone had given them a roll of gold ribbon, and they were taking the assignment very seriously. Liam was looping bows with the precision of a junior engineer, while Harper insisted every balloon be grouped by color. It was strange how easily the two had become inseparable. Not like siblings, exactly more like co-conspirators in a tiny, chaotic kingdom of their own. Darren stepped inside, brushing invisible dust from his jacket. His shoes were new, borrowed, technically, from Lila's closet of emergency menswear that she claimed was for clients but had suspiciously perfect fits for him. He'd stopped arguing about that too. He found her in the main hall, standing on a ladder, pinning a string of soft white lights above the entryway. Her dress was still covered by a long cardigan, and her heels had been kicked off in a corner. Her hair was twisted up, strands falling out as she stretched to reach the last clip. "You're going to fall," Darren called up. "Nonsense," she replied, not even glancing down. "I used to do this in 4-inch stilettos." He walked over and held the ladder steady anyway. I'm not ready to explain to Harper that her stepmom broke her leg trying to hang lights. You'll be explaining it to the paramedics, Lila said, securing the last clip and climbing down carefully. He caught her at the bottom, his hand steadying her waist on instinct. She looked up at him, her eyes still lit from the task. You clean up nice, she said. That's just the borrowed cologne talking. She laughed, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. You ready for tonight? Not even a little. You'll be fine, she said, brushing a bit of lint from his shoulder. Just don't swear at any of the donors and try not to vanish before dessert. I make no promises, he said. Guests began arriving just as the sun fell behind the skyline. The courtyard glowed with lanterns, the music soft but elegant, and the scent of roasted vegetables and rosemary chicken wafted from the kitchen. Darren stayed near the entrance, greeting familiar faces from the community: teachers, single parents, former co-workers, even his old landlord, who looked shocked that Darren was part of the hosting team. He saw Lila across the room more often than he stood beside her. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, speaking with local press, shaking hands, smiling in that way that made people feel seen. Darren watched her and felt a tug in his chest, not of doubt, but of awe. He didn't know how she could still look like the woman who kissed him over burnt coffee at 6 a.m. while also being the woman who could command a room full of senators and CEOs. At one point, she caught his eye and winked, and he felt the knot in his chest loosen. Later, after the speeches and applause, after the impromptu dance Harper forced them into beneath the string lights, Darren found himself alone near the back patio. He leaned on the railing, watching the moon rise over the city skyline. The sound of laughter and music drifted behind him, but he needed a breath. Just one. He heard the soft click of heels approaching, then her voice. Are you hiding from your own party? Just regrouping. She leaned beside him, her bare arm brushing his. You did good tonight. So did you. Lila looked out over the courtyard, where the last of the guests were trickling out. You know, when I started this project, I thought it would be about giving back. But it's been more than that. He glanced at her. Yeah, it's been about letting go, too. Of control. Of fear. Of trying to do everything alone. He took her hand, their fingers tangling together. You're not alone anymore. She turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. Neither are you. They stood in silence for a beat, the music inside fading into something slow and soft. Then she stepped closer. Dance with me. There's no one left out there to impress, he said. I'm not trying to impress anyone, she replied. Just trying to make a memory. He slid his arms around her waist, and they swayed there on the patio, the city lights flickering in the distance. When the music finally ended, she didn't let go. I've been thinking, she said quietly, about the wedding. He raised an eyebrow. Are you calling it off? Because that would be awkward. She laughed, then shook her head. No. I was thinking we should do something different. Different how? Small, she said. Just us. The kids. Maybe a few people who matter. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere real. He nodded slowly. I like that. I want to marry you without chandeliers and speeches. Just vows. And Harper refusing to wear shoes. He grinned. She'd try to marry the ring bearer if we let her. They both laughed, and then fell into a quiet, content hush. 3 weeks later, beneath a canopy of oak trees in the state park just beyond the city, Darren and Lila stood barefoot on a woven rug with Harper and Liam beside them. She wore a simple white sundress. He wore rolled sleeves and the same boots he'd worked in for years. The breeze was light, and the sun filtered through the leaves like a blessing. Their vows were short, not rehearsed. Not perfect, but real. I promise to build a life with you that we don't need to escape from, she said, her voice steady. I promise to never let a day go by without choosing you again, he said, his voice rough but certain. Liam handed over the rings. Harper dropped a flower crown on Lila's head with great ceremony. When they kissed, the only sound was the rustling of trees and 2 kids cheering like it was the best thing they'd ever seen. Afterward, they had a picnic. Sandwiches and lemonade, a cake Harper helped bake, and a playlist Liam curated from their favorite songs. They danced barefoot in the grass. They fell asleep that night tangled together on a blanket beneath the stars, the kids curled up beside them. Months passed. The community center opened fully, thriving with classes and programs. Darren found himself mentoring teens who reminded him of who he used to be. Lila expanded the garden project into 3 more neighborhoods. They bought a fixer-upper just outside the city, a house with a wraparound porch and a swing out front that Harper claimed as her reading throne. Liam took up photography. Harper started writing stories. And Darren and Lila? They kept choosing each other. Through the chaos, the quiet, the wins, and the hard days, there were dishes left in the sink, forgotten lunchboxes, arguments over bedtime. But there was also laughter, kisses in grocery store aisles, late-night talks on the porch, a love so rooted in truth that it didn't need grand gestures to prove itself. One morning, as the sun rose over their backyard, Darren brought Lila a cup of coffee. She took it, blinking sleepily. "You're up early. Harper has a field trip. Liam's already dressed and bragging about it." She laughed, then sipped. "You know, I never thought I'd end up here." He looked around at the trees swaying in the breeze, the house behind them, the kids' laughter echoing faintly from inside. "Me neither," he said, "but I'm glad we did." She reached for his hand, and they stayed like that, in the soft hush of morning. Two people who had once believed they were too broken, too far removed from something as simple and complete as this. But love had found them anyway, and this time they stayed.